Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master. And before we get into this one, hit like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out with the algorithm, but also we love hearing from you guys. We've got an awesome community here, and that's thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, having said all of that, let's get into it. In 1992, X-Men the Animated Series debuted on Fox Kids. I was in high school at the time. I would have been 16 years old when that came out, and I loved that show. So did all of my friends, unanimously. We also loved Batman, the animated series. And I guess, how people would rank it, from person to person may vary. But I feel like for sure those two shows were our top two at the time. And yeah, I don't know how many of our listeners have watched X-Men the animated series, but it starts with an episode with one of these robots, which is called a Sentinel, and it comes crashing through the front of a shopping mall. And there's sort of like two levels happening here at once. The first is that it's trying to catch a young girl named Jubilee, who was what at the time we would refer to as a mall rat because she liked to hang out at malls all the time. I always thought that was a little bit kind of weird terminology in a way because back then, for my generation, I didn't know anybody who didn't like hanging out at malls all the time. Like I felt like everybody did because the internet wasn't a thing yet. That was our social hub. Whether you wanted to watch a movie, you had to go to like Record Town or something like that and buy it. Um, they had junk food in the food court. Like me and my male friends would go there to meet girls. We'd go there to play arcade games because that's where the best games were. I loved the Nintendo Entertainment System, but it was just 8-bit, right? Going to the arcade at the mall though had better games. And so like just everything was happening at the mall. And I think for Generation X, the mall kind of felt like our home away from home. And like with the people making this show and they wanted it to strike a chord with the audience that was, my generation was the target audience. They wanted us to relate to it. And if they drew a house, like it was never our house. You know what I mean? Like I've never seen a house in a cartoon that looked like the house I grew up in. But because a shopping mall, that a lot of malls kind of look alike, right? So then the irony is when they use a mall, it really did have this effect where kind of a ton of people from very different places all watched this show and and reacted as though it was happening at their mall. And I think they felt like, dude, I could have been at the mall that day when this happened? And I think because of all that stuff, that's why this episode resonated with my friends and I so much. We loved this episode. And so, like, immediately after we had seen this, we played GURP Supers, and Jay Mora, who was the GM at the time, he came up with stats for the Sentinels. He converted them over from the Marvel Superheroes role playing game by TSR, which is also called the Phase Rip system. He converted the Mark One Sentinel into GURP Supers, and we fought it. And I remember the first time we ever fought a Sentinel in the mall, it was extremely hard because in GURP Supers, they have this advantage that is called damage resistance, or DR for short. And so the idea is, let's say, for the sake of argument, they have 10 points of DR. If I hit the Sentinel, which was they were hard to miss. You know, it's literally like hitting the broadside of a barn. If I hit it and let's say I was supposed to do 12 points of damage, if it has 10 points of DR, that means you subtract 10 from my 12 and only 2 points got through. And I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but they had something like 300 hit points, right? So if you're only doing or excuse me, 2 points of damage each turn, that kind of sucks, right? And then conversely, though, they've got these massive lasers, kind of like Iron Man, where, you know, they hold out their palm facing you, and the middle of the palm is kind of like a little, you know, repulsor thing in there. So they were blasting us just fine, and we didn't have DR yet, right? So we were taking damage left and right, and we're low level characters. To put this in Dungeons and Dragons terms, we had not yet leveled up. So it was very hard to fight a sentinel, you know? I to me it felt like a bunch of kids in a fight with a tank where the kids are like throwing bricks at it. You know what I mean? Like it was just not going our way. And then finally, Ryan Miller, who kudos to him, he's like, wait a minute though, they have joints. Like, you know, like say the middle of the thigh that is kind of that dark pinkish color, that might have damage resistance. But what about the crack between like the thigh and the kneecap? And I remember he ran around behind it and he's like, what do the back of the knees look like? Because if there's some kind of like a big plate there, they're not going to be able to bend their knees, you know, so on and so forth. And so the way Jay kind of ran it was if it was sort of like a pinkish color or a purplish color, those parts had the damage resistance. But if you could see some like gray colored hydraulics or something inside of a crack, we had to start making called shots to hit those parts. And then we bypassed that armor, did damage, and now we were finally getting somewhere. And so initially, it's a lot of like you attack their ankles or their knees or whatever. They would usually fall forwards, but still be able to crawl around on their hands. They could still point their palm at you and shoot, you know, stuff like that. They were still a problem. And after a while, because we ran this same scenario at least 100 times in high school. And what was going on with that is we loved the game. And the pattern became every Friday night we'd go to the mall. There was a movie theater nearby. We'd get tickets for whatever was in the theater at the time. It might have been the old Mario Brothers movie. It might have been Demolition Man, you know, whatever the case may be. We'd buy movie tickets and then it would be an hour or something before our movie started. And then usually we'd go to the arcade and play video games like the X-Men 6-player arcade game, stuff like that. I was always Colossus. Jay was always Nightcrawler. I think Ryan was always Wolverine, actually. But at any rate, we did stuff like that, and then when it was time to go to the movie, you know, we'd go watch the movie. Afterwards, every Friday night, we went to Burger King. Our local Burger King used to be like awesome. It was of all the burger places, they had the best food at the time, so we always went there. Sadly, that's no longer the case. Their quality has really taken a dive over the years. Um, and then we'd go back to Jay's house, and we'd usually get there around midnight. And then we would kind of play role playing games until we were too tired to play role playing games anymore, you know? Um, and not every week did Jay have an adventure ready. So we were always pestering him, you know, hey, Jay, run a game, run a game. And he'd be like, dude, I don't have a game ready. Like, just let's watch a movie or something. And we kept bugging him. And I think I was the one that said, dude, just do Sentinels at the mall. We don't even care about the plot. Just do Sentinels at the mall. And everybody else would go, yeah, yeah, do that. So we did. Years later, I came up with a reason for what was going on at the mall and why this kept happening. We had said that it involved Necron, that he was sort of the puppet master behind all of this. And then the cast of characters was kind of changing too. For the three main members of the Continuum, they all got girlfriends who were Breeze was Powerhouse's girlfriend, Frostbite was Shadowstorm's girlfriend, and a character named Tunnel Girl, who actually had transmutation and could turn dirt into oxygen and vice versa. She was creating these underground things for us with her power, but that's why we called her Tunnel Girl. But anyway, that character dated Torch. They were involved in the adventures. We picked up some new characters. David Hout played a guy named Gadget that had 6 arms and the split power, so he could turn into like 5 copies of himself. A guy named Henning Meister played a character that was kind of a knockoff of Spider-Man. Tom Edwards, who I'm still friends with to this day. I would love to get him on Discord or something like that and run a game with him in it. He hasn't played for decades now, but he played a character that was very, very close to Namorita, and her name was Aqua. Um, but at any rate, yeah, we just ran a ton of these adventures where we fought Sentinels in the mall, and a good time was had by all. I don't think there was a single adventure that followed this format where we didn't like it. It was just our go-to. And it might sound repetitive, but like if you're someone who plays Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I mean? A lot of dungeons are very similar to each other, and people have a great time playing that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we absolutely kept doing this over and over and over again. And then the cool thing was, by the time it was the end of our senior year, we had leveled up so much. Like Powerhouse was killing Sentinels like nothing. He had gotten so good at it, he could just fly through their necks and just break it, with his flight and strength and all that stuff, and their heads would just go rolling. He actually started collecting Sentinel parts and building replicas of the Transformers because we wanted the characters to not seem two dimensional. We wanted them to have hobbies and stuff like that. And so he was supposed to be a big Transformers fan, and he built an Optimus Prime at one point out of Sentinel parts, and then he'd also go to a junkyard with David Hout's character, and they'd get parts of like a real semi, bring it back, and like weld them on to this Sentinel skeleton, and I'm kind of going off into left field, but the point is, this is very nostalgic for me. Um, I miss being able to play in games that Jay ran. I miss fighting Sentinels in the mall. Now, ironically, these days, the mall has changed a lot, but this is where kind of the local comic book convention takes place. And I'm often a guest at these events. So the next time I'm going, I'm hoping, since we're doing this time travel thing and we're back in the 90s again, I'm hoping to actually run Sentinels at the mall at the mall. You know what I mean? I think that'd be cool. And we can use hero clicks for the miniatures, and I have multiple of the old Sentinels that they made for hero clicks, so that'd be really neat. But that's kind of all I can say about this one. It's hard to get into the specifics when it is kind of just a beat 'em up style adventure. You know what I mean? There's no great plot going on here. It is just kind of everybody shoot the giant robot until it runs out of hit points, and then leave before the police show up. That was it. Wash, rinse, repeat. But it was fun. We liked it. I hope you guys got a kick out of this video. If so, as always, smash like. Make sure you're subscribed because YouTube loves to unsubscribe you and not tell you. And last but not least, leave us a comment. Are there any games that you guys play that is almost like the gaming equivalent of comfort food? I'd be curious to hear what that is. And I guess that's it. So, from all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.